Joining us now for reaction to this developing news, Fox News national security strategist Sebastian Gorka, retired Brigadier General Tony Tata, former senior intelligence officer Lieutenant General Tony Shaffer. Dr. Gorka, I begin with you. You know, sometimes I think countries act because it's the right thing to do. The world sees these horrific, evil images of men, women, and children, innocent people. We know the ongoing civil war here that has been going on. I think the president is sending a clear message when he said tonight, Dr. Gorka, the evil, despicable attack that left mothers, fathers, infants, and children thrashing in pain and gasping for air. These aren't the actions of a man. They're crimes of a monster. And then the challenge to Russia and the challenge to Iran directly. Your reaction?
The president is not an interventionist, and I know the left doesn't believe this. He is a very, very compassionate man, whether he's meeting with victims from Parkland or whether he's looking at the footage of that chemical weapons attack in Syria. And we're not interested in a large footprint. That's not what the president believes in. But he believes in a simple saying: for evil to triumph, all you need is for good men to do nothing. Tonight, we are standing up for the moral rectitude of this nation and what it stands for. We can't fix everything. The president was clear. There is evil, there are atrocities around the world, and we can't solve all of them. But when we have a capacity to respond to a monster like Assad, who has been responsible for a civil war that has caused the deaths in the last 7 years of 500,000 people, if we have a capacity to respond, we are duty-bound to do so. And that is what is happening tonight. And he sent a very clear message to Russia and to Iran. You have to draw your own internal red lines now. You have to decide if you are prepared to pay a further price for sponsoring a regime as evil as Bashar al-Assad's regime. That is how simple it is.
And then he held out the advantages of being friends with the United States, the economic advantages that he would prefer to have friendship, as he often does. General Tata, let me bring you in here. The words of the president tonight following the horrors of World War I a century ago. Civilized nations joined together to ban chemical warfare, and chemical weapons are uniquely dangerous not only because they inflict gruesome suffering, because even small amounts can unleash widespread devastation. And the purpose of these actions is to establish a strong deterrent against the production, spread, and use of chemical weapons. And he went on about how these are specific precision strikes. So I believe Dr. Gorka is right. This is not a long-term protracted conflict that the president is talking about. It is to stop the specific use of chemical weapons, as we saw these images this week.
Yes, Sean, absolutely. The president was right on the money in talking about the devastation that chemical weapons can cause. It's part of our national security strategy. There are two underlying principles. One is to stop the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, to include chemical, biological, and nuclear weapons. And the other is an international order that's based on the rule of law. So the president is very simply implementing our national security strategy. And I don't remember in recent history, maybe ever in history, an administration that is so good at synchronizing the elements of national power that you heard the president mention when he mentioned diplomatic, military, and economic. And I would add in there information, his tweets, and the way that his administration shapes information and targets. He laid out in one of his tweets an economic olive branch to Russia to try to pull them away from. And he has a tweet that sends the Russian Navy into the Mediterranean. I mean, that's powerful, and that's an element of national power. And diplomatically, we submitted a UN resolution, and Russia vetoed it, as they'd done 12 other times with regard to protecting Syria and that murderous regime. And so when you think about diplomacy, military, economic, this administration has gotten it right on ISIS, they've gotten it right on North Korea, and they're getting it right here, in my opinion. And I think that what we've got tonight is brave souls out there flying air cover, and we're going to have cruise missiles going in, and I would bet money that they're targeting the SA-2 air defense systems that are Russian-built that can shoot down U.S. air breather airplanes. And then we're going to do some battle damage assessment when the sun comes up. And then there will be another wave coming after this thing. And initially we're coming in with cruise missiles, but it would not surprise me if we've got B-2 bombers and several other types of aircraft ready to attack targets very specifically in Syria.
Let me go back to Dr. Gorka, if I may. Dr. Gorka, the president very specific that these are precision strikes, a coalition of the willing, including France and Great Britain. And to your point, what the president said, what kind of nation wants to be associated? At a direct appeal to both Russia and Tehran tonight, what nation wants to be associated with the mass murder of innocent men, women, and children? And the nations of the world can be judged by the friends they keep, and no nation can succeed in the long run by promoting these rogue states, these brutal tyrants, these murdering despots and dictators. And remember, it was Barack Obama that drew the red line in the sand, Dr. Gorka, and it was John Kerry that said 100% of these weapons are gone. They're not.
They're not. And it was Russia that was supposed to guarantee the withdrawal of those weapons. And guess what? The Obama administration believed them. But the point is a completely valid point. And Brigadier Tata made it completely correctly. This isn't just about horrible pictures and some kind of visceral emotional response. This is illegal by all standards of humanity and by international law. You can go to war, you can defend your nation's national interests, but you cannot use chemical weapons, and they are currently being used against women and children. And what does it say to all the Fox viewers out there who may be worried? I set one question for you. What does it say about America if we do nothing after such an event where a monster uses these kinds of weapons against children? America must respond, and it is going to be very precise, surgical, targeting those capabilities, and also some symbolic targets as well that send a very clear message to Assad. We have saved Western civilization already many times in the 20th century, whether it's fascists and Nazis, or whether it's winning the Cold War, or whether it's taking down ISIS and their caliphate. Once again, America, the most powerful nation on God's earth, is duty-bound to respond to these horrors.
You know, stand right there, Dr. Gorka. We appreciate it.